The next speaker for you today is named Ryan Giarusso. Ryan is a senior majoring in computer science with honors and minoring in economics, political science, and mathematics. Prior to attending UNI, he served in the U.S. Army, worked in the staff of the U.S. Senate, consulted for political campaigns, nonprofits, and startups, and qualified as a seaplane pilot. In addition to his coursework, he currently manages the high-risk segment of an investment portfolio, is a partner in 2 startup companies, and is applying to law school. He's here to talk today about why preparing to fail is the best way to succeed. Ryan Giarusso, please.
Thanks, Colby. Hi, everyone. I have something to tell you here. It's a little bit of a bad news thing. See, the Ryan that bio described isn't here today. Today, you get to hear from somebody who has college credits from 4 different schools, somebody who has credits towards 6 different majors, somebody who's the sheepish owner of embarrassing stories, a few of which you'll hear later today. And when he describes what he's doing now to friends and family, they aren't proud, they're disappointed. It seems that perspective matters. Hi, I'm Ryan, and by that second account that I gave you, I'm a failure. But most people hear that introduction and think I'm incredibly accomplished. You see, all of the different things I've done represent a failure at the previous one. I have so many minors because I couldn't decide on a major. And I have so many different work experiences because I can't pick a profession and stick to it. But ask around a little bit. You'll realize that everyone has, at one time or another, felt that the descriptor failure accurately describes them. I may be an extreme example, but I'm not alone. Much like me, many people can point to that time in their life as an inflection point, a point at which their life changed, and we hope for the better. I'm here to talk to you today about these points, what I call existential crises, why you're bound to have one sometime in the next few months, if not even the next few weeks, how to prepare yourself now to minimize that damage, and how to, in the words of one rather infamous presidential advisor, never let a good crisis go to waste. But before we begin, I want to talk about something very different. I want to talk about senators, terrorism, and airplanes. I promise it's going to make sense. Imagine a different world for a moment, where on September 10th, 2001, legislation championed by Senator Smith came into effect, requiring hardened doors on all commercial aircraft. You might not remember, but this was one of those things identified that could have single-handedly stopped the terrorist attacks on 9/11. So Senator Smith would be a hero, right? He stopped it. But all of us have that perspective. We have hindsight. See, if Senator Smith's bill had succeeded, there would have been no 9/11, and thus no reason to believe that hardened doors had done anything to protect us. In fact, many of us would probably hate Senator Smith because he imposed some silly federal regulation at tremendous cost. He wouldn't be a hero at all. That's the nature of prediction. And I want to start with this because many of you are going to sit here and think that you don't need this talk, that these things won't happen to you. And in fact, honestly, that's exactly how I would have felt when I was in your shoes. But I have hindsight, and you guys don't. So listen to me when I say that I can't tell you how many professors, administrators, students, even some of your RAs here today, have come up to me to tell me their story about something very similar to what I'm going to talk about today. You may not believe that you need it now, but if the vast majority of people think you do, the best thing you can do is to listen and thank yourself later. So with that out of the way, let's talk about what I mean by existential crisis, because clearly I've spent too much time in a philosophy classroom and I need to get out and see the light of day. Very specifically, here's what I mean. An existential crisis is a moment at which your life ceases to make sense, ceases to matter. Quite literally, it's a crisis of existence. It's in the 7th grade when you came home from the school dance sobbing, or the senior year of high school when you didn't get the part or the award or the scholarship or whatever it was supposed to be, the one that was supposed to be yours. Suddenly, everything you thought about who you are is wrong. Your life is ruined and it's over. Or at least that's what we think. Because rationally today, we can look back on those experiences and say that that wasn't the end. There was a second chapter. But why do I bring this up now? You guys are in the middle of Disney World. You know, the experience of a lifetime. You're supposed to be coming to college where it's fun and exciting and full of optimism. Who am I to swoop in and tell you how difficult it's going to be or to warn you of the dangers ahead? You see, many of you are about to do something that you've been aching to do for years. I know I was aching to do it when I was in your shoes. You're about to move out from under mom and dad's oppressive dictatorship of curfews and rules and interrogations and surveillance. You finally get to be your own person. But think about that for a second, and maybe a second more. Sure, mom and dad ran a police state, but that police state didn't just oppress, it secured. For many years, you've had an incredible, if sometimes stifling, safety blanket right by your side for your entire life. Sure, they made life difficult, but they were your support system. You lived within their world and defined yourself within that. Now, you live in mine. In my world, you have to define yourself. And whatever you choose, rest assured, the rest of us are going to yell feedback from every angle, and it won't always be positive. Even worse, when this newly defined you enters the world, you'll have to tackle new challenges without your old safety net. Here, mom and dad can't fix everything. College is this transition from that high school student who defines themselves within the world of their parents to an adult that has their own sense of self-worth and meaning. That sounds terrifying when you think about it. The people earlier just told you that you had to take a bunch of classes, get a fancy piece of paper, and poof, you're an adult. Except I've just told you that in taking that bunch of classes, it's really a narrow, swerving path with deadly lava on either side, and oh yeah, you start out blind. See, the hardest thing is to grasp that everyone is going to touch it at some point. Just ask around. Behind every person that looks incredibly successful and immune to failure is a story of how they did exactly that. I'm no exception. You see, at age 20, I found myself realizing that my dream of a decade was really a nightmare, and I spent the following 12 months struggling to escape. Will I be successful? Only time will tell. See, a few years ago, I was feeling a lot like you guys are. I was walking through Newark Airport by myself on my way to catch a bus to where I would start my college career. Excitement outweighed nervousness, and I had dreamed about this day for a decade. Heck, my parents supported me. Even the local newspaper had done an article about me, where I was going and what I was doing. But fast forward 2 years, and the situation was vastly different. This wasn't my dream, and I needed a way out. Yet what I told my parents, you would have thought I had shot my dad in the foot. When I decided to transfer for the first time, my father and I stopped talking for nearly 6 weeks. Any conversation we had descended into a shouting match. In high school, I had been a poster child of perfection. I didn't know how to fail, and suddenly, I was stumbling. And in trying to steady myself, I fell flat on my face. I ran without much thought to a fancy, expensive school in Washington, D.C. If the first time was a bad experience, this was a horrible one. I spent an entire year unhappy, and my grades tanked. I stopped participating in clubs, and my circle of friends grew smaller and smaller. But this was my last chance to salvage those high expectations that everyone had for me, right? I was working in Iowa the following summer. I had a pretty fancy title, and I was pretty pleased with myself. Or at least everybody seemed to think that my new school was great, or at least good enough that they didn't begrudge me for leaving my first. And around the dinner table one evening sat a pretty star-studded cast. One gentleman was advising me on getting a high-profile consulting job. Next to him was the then president of UNI. Across the table from him was the provost. They were fawning over me, and it was a great time. They offered me the chance to get into the best dorms if I would just come back to UNI. We all laughed. Everyone knew I would never leave an elite school to come back to Cedar Falls. I was the only one that knew that I was unhappy at my elite school, but I had to stay there, didn't I? I can't tell you why I snapped. I don't remember. I can tell you that it wasn't much more than a week before the fall semester started that I decided I wasn't going back to Washington, D.C. I was a 21-year-old embarrassment who moved back to his hometown and applied to his hometown university where he would share a parking pass with his mother. I can't tell you how many times news of my latest change got me that look. They would never say it, but I knew it. How did you screw up so bad that you ended up back here? Weren't you supposed to do great things? If you had told that kid in Newark what he would be doing 4 years later, he would have laughed in your face. Yet in retrospect, the last decision was definitely the hardest, but probably the best I could have made. Now I live in a place where I feel part of a community. I'm close to friends and family, and I study things that interest me. Critics and disappointed naysayers be damned. Now, surely there's a difference between merely dipping a toe in the lava and plunging headfirst, although you're all welcome to debate whether I'm a dipper or a plunger or a let's just keep sticking our foot in the lava kind of person. Regardless, the scale of manageable crises depends on your preparedness to handle it. And this is where I want to talk a little bit about preparing for your crisis. Now, you can ask me, did I prepare? And honestly, consciously, no. But subconsciously, I kept everything together just enough to make the next leap. So here are 3 tips that I've learned to preparing yourself for these crises and to making that next leap. Sometimes tips like these sit in plain sight, and sometimes they're cliches. Here's one that's both. For some of you today, your parents are an incredible support system. You're understandably excited to finally get out from underneath them. But let me warn you, parents may not know about Snapchat or understand how important it is that you be at this party, but they do have your best interest at heart. They're going to disapprove of pictures you post on Facebook and for going out too much. There will be so many opportunities to burn those bridges and ruin that relationship, just in the next few weeks, much less the next few months. Don't do it. Don't let it get to your head. Don't fall into that trap of thinking that your life is different now and you don't need their help. I fought with my dad a lot over some of my decisions, to such extents that we almost ruined our relationship on multiple occasions. But looking back on it today, I could not have survived my transitions without his support, and I know that he had nothing but my best interest at heart. Now, I and many of you are pretty lucky. We won that parent lottery. Some of us didn't. Some of you might be here alone today. And so hearing stuff about support systems makes you feel a little bit isolated. I'm going to warn you now. There's a reason you feel that way. You need to find a rock. Maybe it's that best friend, a religious advisor, some other family member. But this is your most pressing challenge. None of us can survive long, especially in college, on our own. Now notice that I said best friend, not a friend. And that's the second piece of my advice. Make lots of friends, but be very careful about your closest 5. Just beginning my college experience, a mentor told me, you get to choose your 5 closest friends. They get to choose who you will be. You see, college is a long stream of accidental friendships. You're going to be friends with your roommate, with the person sitting next to you today, or the person sitting next to you in class next week. I hope that these chance encounters shape your life for the better, that your roommate is a 4.0. But too often that simply isn't the case. And I have some bad news for you. I recently read a study that the best predictor of your graduating GPA isn't your SAT or ACT score, your high school GPA, your major, your socioeconomic status, none of that. It's your freshman roommate's graduating GPA. It turns out that the people that are close to you have a tremendous impact. And so my advice is, don't just think that these people get to pick who you are in general. Think about it specifically. They get to pick what GPA you get. They get to pick what kind of future you'll have, what goals you'll set. If your 5 closest friends can't pass that test, you need a new set of friends. Now, among the many things you'll choose in life is the focus of my final tip, and that is that to some extent, you get to pick your existential crisis. It's as if I can see mine subconsciously coming. Out of the vast range of possible crises, these are the ones that we pick for ourselves. But just remember that they're not all equal. Whether you like it or not, whether you think it's just or not, some crises go away and others don't. A bad breakup and a failed midterm can be corrected by the end of the semester. Whereas my college hopping has forced me to add an addendum to my law school applications. I have to explain why I have so many transcripts. And yet even this is mild on the grand scale of possibilities. Deciding that dealing marijuana out of your dorm room is a good college job could land you with a felony drug conviction, or simply stumbling around drunk downtown Cedar Falls and getting a citation for minor in possession could ruin your dream of becoming a teacher. Keep these things in mind when you're walking around trying to make the decisions that are going to shape the rest of your life. You see, even small and seemingly simple things can have lasting consequences. Post a drunken photo on social media this fall, forget about it, and watch it derail your dream job right after graduation. Stumble drunkenly around Cedar Falls and find yourself without a profession. I don't want to scare you into hiding. That's not my goal. College is supposed to be fun, and every once in a while we do something we're not particularly proud of. Just recognize that your crisis is going to stick with you. Will you sheepishly talk about it to the incoming freshman class in 3 years? Or will it force you to change the entire direction and purpose of your life? That's up to you. Now, before you get too frightened of these crises, I want you to keep in mind that you should never let a good one go to waste. Sometimes it takes a devastating fire to help you realize that you were headed down the wrong path, that you need a new clean slate to begin again. And so when your crisis comes, put it to good use. I don't know what it will be, and I can't help you prepare for every little detail. But over the next few months and years, you can. Your life is about to change, and rather drastically at that. That change is going to lead to some sort of crisis. You're going to watch everything you had planned fall apart in front of your eyes. College is going to suddenly change from the Disneyland paradise to a cage match to the death, and you're going to get sucker punched. While you lay there on the mat for a second, close your eyes and remember that some moron not too long ago told me this exact thing would happen. It's not over. It's not hopeless. Yeah, you're going to have to explain to everyone close to you why that perfect plan you had as a freshman actually doesn't really make sense anymore. And now you need a new one. But your life isn't over, and you aren't forever a failure. A lot of success ultimately depends on your ability to take that moment by the horns. It's the learning experience that's going to define your transition from childhood to adulthood. Now, before I let you slip back into the wonderful world of Disney, I want to leave you with one final point. When life sucker punches you, you're going to feel very alone. You see, failure is this dirty, smelly, nasty thing that we do in private. We don't brag about it on Facebook, and we certainly don't brag about it in person. But just because it's not real or on Facebook doesn't mean that it's not real. That they let me, of all people, the college hopper, the major hopper, up here to talk to you, is a testament to just how common things like this are. My challenge to you is to ask someone about a failure of theirs. Maybe it's your RA, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's even a professor in class next week. But keep that example in the back of your head for when you need it someday, when you have to convince yourself to keep trying or even ask for help. You'll be thankful you did. Now get back to Disney World, enjoy the ups and the downs, and try not to lose your lunch by the end of the ride.